What's up, everyone? This is Bobby Douglas and welcome to another video. So as many of you know, the Super Bowl just concluded. The Eagles just destroyed the Chiefs in what was probably one of the most boring Super Bowls of my lifetime. But with that ending, it means that college basketball has now stepped into the forefront of the sports landscape with March Madness just around a month away. So today I thought it would be a good idea to recap some of the major storylines going on in college basketball so we can get all caught up before this final stretch. Here is the post-Super Bowl guide to college basketball. So, number one is Alabama is officially a basketball state. Right now, Auburn and Alabama are ranked number 1 and number 2 in the country, respectively, and they actually play each other this Saturday in what will be the game of the year in the sport. Auburn has looked like the best team in the country all year long. They won the Maui Invitational going away. They've dominated the SEC, and they have a National Player of the Year candidate in Janai Broome. While Alabama is the same old Alabama. They're going to play super fast. They shoot a bunch of threes. Mark Sears had a slow start to this season, but has come on stronger as of late. And this team is just loaded with shooters and depth, making them a nightmare to play against. Grant Nelson has really stepped up in his second year with the program. I really like the additions of Chris Youngblood and Aiden Holloway, who can both shoot really well. Auburn and Alabama are a combined 41-5 on the season and are both tied for first place in the SEC right now, which is saying a lot because the SEC is absolutely loaded this year with teams like Florida and Tennessee looking like legit Final Four contenders, and teams like Missouri, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and Kentucky all looking like solid tournament threats as well. Number 2 is that Cooper Flagg is now the overwhelming favorite for National Player of the Year. The 18-year-old freshman is having an awesome season for Duke. He's averaging around 19 points, 7 rebounds, and 4 assists per game. And what's really nice to see about Flagg is that he's actually improved greatly from an offensive standpoint. He's gotten a lot more comfortable creating shots off the dribble and getting to the rim. His three-point percentage has ticked up to around 36%, which is a very solid number. And he really does everything for this Duke team. He leads them in points, rebounds, assists, and blocks. And he's just been the two-way force at the collegiate level that we hope to see at the beginning of the year. Duke is one of the best teams in the country. They've been dominating a weak ACC. But behind Flagg, they are a legit national championship contender. Cooper Flagg leads me into my next point in that the freshmen are dominating college basketball to an extent that we've never really seen before. Right now this season, 16 freshmen are averaging over 15 points per game, which is a number we haven't seen since the 2020 season. These freshmen are all at the top of draft boards, and they are scattered all around the country, which makes this extremely interesting. We already talked about Cooper Flagg, but you also have Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey at Rutgers, who, while they probably won't make the tournament, have both been outstanding in their own right. You have Kasparas Yakashonas from Illinois, who is the offensive engine of a very solid Illini team. Derek Queen is a big man from Maryland, who's averaging around 15.5 points and 8.5 rebounds per game. Trey Johnson is averaging 19 points a game at Texas as a 6'5" bucket getter. Asa Newell is a 6'10" power forward from Georgia, who's leading that team in points and rebounds per game. And even guys in smaller roles like Tahad Pettiford at Auburn is a legitimate scoring spark plug for the best offense in college basketball. There are so many other guys like VJ Edgecombe and Rod Wright over at Baylor, Cooper Flagg's teammates in Kon Knipple and Kamen Maluach. There are literally too many good freshmen to count right now. It truly is one of the best years I've seen from a young talent standpoint, and it has been a blast to watch. Hi, this is Future Bobby. I just wanted to add that Liam McNeely just had 38 points in a win at Creighton, so add him into the elite freshman mix as well. Okay, continue with the video. Number 4 is that St. John's actually looks like the best team in the Big East right now. Rick Pitino in year 2 as head coach has really made this program one of the most feared in the country. They have an elite defense. They pressure you for extended amounts of time. They are devastatingly long. They have so many shot blockers, and the entire team has active hands. And they really do look like those old Louisville teams that we saw have so much success in the mid-2010s. Right now, St. John's has the 3rd most efficient defense in the country per Bart Torvik, and they force turnovers on around 22% of their possessions. They are super physical, and they can just throw waves of guys at you. Right now, St. John's is 21-3 and 12-1 in the Big East, and their 3 losses came by a combined, I'm looking at it now, 5 points, and one of those was a double overtime loss to Baylor back in November. They haven't lost since 2025 began, and they just look like an absolute buzzsaw as we enter the tournament. I do have legit questions about their offense, but honestly, the more I watch them, the more I just trust that they have enough guys to make shots at key times. I really like RJ Lewis as a mid-range shot creator who can get a shot off at any time. He's averaging around 17 points a game. You have Kadari Richmond as kind of a table setter and scorer. He's averaging 12 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists per game. Zuby Ejiofor just gets everything on the offensive glass and is such a problem to deal with. As a post scorer, he's averaging 14 points and 8 boards a game. And while nobody on this team can shoot from 3, they shoot 29% from 3 as a team. I just kind of think they'll find ways to win games because, frankly, they've been doing that all year. Next up, I want to talk about Houston because they are once again just dominating the metric sites. If you're familiar with sites like Bart Torvik and KenPom, you know that Houston just finds ways to remain number 1 when it comes to all of these projection sites, and it's been more of the same this year. Right now, despite not being ranked in the top 5 of the AP poll, Bart Torvik have them as the number 1 team in the country. Their defense is obviously always going to be elite. They love trapping you and making you uncomfortable. They have really good ball pressure guys. They can switch really easily. Jawan Roberts has been really good as a mobile big man. And then you also have JoJo Tugler, who is just a freak of nature defensively, one of the best individual defenders I've seen this season in college basketball, and he honestly might get drafted just because of that. The other thing with Houston, obviously, is going to be their offensive rebounding. They're generating a lot of buckets off of that, but the difference between this year's Houston team and the teams from a few years ago is that their shooting is elite. Right now, as a team, they're knocking down 39.4% of their threes, which is good for 7th in the country, and they have 2 guys in LJ Cryer and Emmanuel Sharp who are just snipers from beyond the arc. Sharp is hitting 43.6% of his threes, and Cryer is hitting 41% of his threes. And for the first time in I think a while, Houston is actually capitalizing on the open looks generated from their offensive rebounding. And it just makes them so hard to stop offensively because you have to worry about so many different things when guarding them. Next up, I want to talk about the Big Ten because they have a lot of solid teams, but I'm not sure they have any national championship contenders. Purdue and Michigan State are definitely the top 2 teams in the conference for my money. Purdue has Braden Smith, who's been one of the best point guards in the country, probably the best point guard in the country if I'm being totally honest. He's really built on his last 2 years at Purdue. He's averaging around 16 points and 9 assists per game and is just totally able to control the pace of any game he's in. You also have Trey Kaufman-Renn, who has been unleashed due to the departure of Zach Edey. He's averaging around 19 points and 6 rebounds a game as well. And with those 2 guys, you have a really nice inside-out presence that the supporting cast can kind of build around. Fletcher Lawyer is obviously another sharpshooter. He's averaging around 14 points a game, and this team is just really good at getting easy shots and finishing. And then on the other side, you have Michigan State, who is just a physical, hard-nosed Tom Izzo type of team. They only shoot 29% from 3, and that sometimes tanks their offense, but what I've seen recently is that the emergence of Jace Richardson has really bolstered this Spartan offense. So I'm hoping he gets more minutes and enters the starting lineup to close the year because I think he is Michigan State's best offensive player without a doubt. I like Jaden Akins as a number 2 type of creator. And then Jeremy Fears I just think is the perfect Tom Izzo point guard. He's unselfish. He'll bother teams defensively. He plays super hard and just has that dog factor that the leaders of Tom Izzo teams tend to have. So I really like both of those teams, but I'm not sure they're national championship contenders. As a whole, the conference does have a lot of depth. I really like Illinois. I think Michigan is interesting with Danny Wolf. You have Wisconsin, you have Maryland, UCLA, Oregon. These are all solid tournament teams. But again, I'm just not sure they have that one national championship contender. So I do think that Big Ten title drought will continue for the conference. Next up, I want to bring up the February rule, aka the losing formula. If you've been following my channel for a while, I published a video back in 2021, I want to say, that basically went into the details of winning streaks and how they impacted NCAA tournament performance. And what I found is that every single champion since 1995 has had at least one loss coming February 1st or later before the tournament. What this means is that typically you want to avoid these teams that are super hot and are on these crazy winning streaks entering the tournament. I've long held the belief that teams need to get a loss out of their system before they play the most important games of their season, and that is largely held through going back the last 30 years. So what's interesting is that the 2 best teams in the country by a lot of people's perspectives, Auburn and Duke, both lost this past Saturday. So they have gotten their loss out of the way and they are fine to contend for titles. But teams that haven't yet lost in February are numerous, and there are a lot of notable contenders. Texas A&M, Alabama, St. John's. Ideally, for these teams to truly contend in my eyes, you have to lose at least once before the NCAA tournament. So it's just something to monitor. Next up, the coaching carousel is in full swing. So most notably, Mike Woodson just announced that he's stepping down at the end of the year, so Indiana will be an open job. Right now, the confirmed open jobs include Indiana, Florida State, Virginia, Miami, and based on the way their seasons are going, I expect North Carolina and Villanova to open up as well. So it's going to be a major coaching carousel. If I had to go through and pick certain coaches for each team, I think Brad Stevens is the first call you make to Indiana. Whether or not he says yes, I don't know. You look at Dusty May, even though he seems pretty happy at Michigan. Chris Beard from Ole Miss is another one I'd look at for Indiana. I think Will Wade will get hired at one of these jobs. I just think he's a terrific coach, and he's kind of paid his dues for the FBI stuff. So I wouldn't mind seeing someone like North Carolina make a run at him. Virginia, I like Richie McKay over at Liberty. He was an assistant under Tony Bennett previously, and he's built a consistent winning program, so I think he deserves a look. Villanova, I think Mitch Henderson should get a call. He's done a really good job at Princeton. But again, these jobs are going to command a lot of attention, and I'm really excited to see how they turn out. Number 9, I want to talk about the All-Americans. So basically right now, as I see it, there are 4 near locks for first-team All-America. Those would be Janai Broom over at Auburn, Cooper Flagg at Duke, Braden Smith at Purdue, and then Cam Jones from Marquette, who's averaging around 20 points and 6 assists per game. The 5th All-American spot is where it gets a little bit tricky. You have guys like Mark Sears, you have Hunter Dickinson, the typical names and stuff, but I think Ryan Kalkbrenner of Creighton should get that 5th spot. He's averaging around 19 points and 9 rebounds per game, in addition to close to 3 blocks. He's really anchored Creighton's defense and is the reason why they've been extremely viable in the Big East despite losing a lot of players from last year's team. He had a 49-point game to open up the season, and again, he's just been super impactful defensively, and I think he deserves that 5th first-team All-America spot. To wrap it up, I'm going to end it with some Final Four predictions based on what I've seen this year. So right now, my Final Four, if the brackets all lined up the correct way, would be Auburn, Iowa State, Houston, and Florida. Auburn, we talked about earlier. Iowa State, I really like their 3-guard attack and their defense. Houston, we talked about them as well. And then Florida just looks like a machine offensively in that they can hurt you in so many different ways. As for a title prediction, I would still have Auburn taking it over Iowa State. They have shooters all over the floor. Janai Broom is a really good focal point for them in terms of the passing, the scoring, the rebounding. And so right now, if the season ended today, Auburn would be my national champion. And that will wrap up my post-Super Bowl guide to college basketball. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, give me your thoughts below.